Have you ever wondered why some people seem to move through life as if they're playing a different game one, where every move is deliberate, every word calculated, and every failure somehow transforms into power? Centuries ago, a man named Niccolo Machiavelli dared to look at human nature without illusions. He stripped away the comforting lies we tell ourselves and exposed the psychology of control not as something evil, but as something real. Yet what happens when Machiavelli's sharp, strategic mind meets the timeless wisdom of Alan Watts, the philosopher of spiritual freedom and self-awareness? One man studied how power binds the world. The other taught how to let go of the world entirely. And somewhere in the meeting of these two minds lies a paradox. To be truly free, says Alan Watts, you must understand the forces that control you and then learn to laugh at them. In today's journey, we will decode Machiavelli's hidden lessons not as cold political strategies, but as profound psychological tools to free yourself from manipulation, ignorance, and inner chaos. Because the truth is, Machiavelli wasn't teaching us how to dominate others, he was warning us about how others might dominate us. And Alan Watts helps us see how freedom begins when you stop taking the game so seriously. Welcome to the Psychology of Power and Freedom. Part 1. The Game of Human Nature. Alan Watts once said, "You and I are all as much continuous with the physical universe as a wave is continuous with the ocean." Machiavelli, in his own way, saw the same ocean but through the eyes of politics. He understood that humans are driven by tides of fear, desire, and self-preservation. He did not invent the game of power, he merely described it, as a sailor might describe the waves. Machiavelli believed that if you want to live freely in the world, you must first see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. He wrote, "The man who neglects what is done for what ought to be done sooner effects his ruin than his preservation." In other words, the dreamer who refuses to look at reality becomes a victim of those who do. Alan Watts would agree, but he'd add a spiritual twist. He might say, you are the dreamer in the dream, but once you realize this, you stop clinging to illusions and then you can play. So the first hidden lesson is this. Power, Machiavelli says, belongs to those who understand human nature, not to those who fight against it. But freedom, Alan Watts says, belongs to those who understand the illusion of power itself. Combine these two and you get something extraordinary. The awareness to move within society with clarity, not attachment. To observe manipulation without falling into it. To act strategically without losing your soul. Most people are controlled not because someone stronger rules over them, but because they don't even know the rules. They live reacting, not creating. They are emotional puppets, pulled by invisible strings of approval, fear, and social validation. Machiavelli saw this centuries before psychology was born. He saw that people crave safety more than truth, appearance more than reality. They obey not power itself, but the illusion of power. Alan Watts would say this is because we mistake the mask for the face, the role for the reality. We are hypnotized by social games, by what we should be, instead of realizing that these are all costumes in the great theater of life. Once you see the performance, you stop being manipulated by it. You start observing it, and in that observation lies true intelligence. The first step to becoming impossible to control is not rebellion, it is awareness. To look at the world with Machiavelli's realism, but from the stillness of Alan Watts' laughter. Because when you see that the emperor has no clothes, when you realize that every game of control is sustained by belief, you gain a freedom no tyrant can touch. That is the first true life hack. Understand the game so that you no longer need to win it. Part 2. The power of perception. The second hidden lesson is about perception, how people see you, and how you see yourself. Machiavelli famously said, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." He understood that the world doesn't respond to truth. It responds to images. And those who shape perception, shape reality. But this idea becomes dangerous when it turns into manipulation. Alan Watts would step in here and whisper, "The mask is not evil, but believing you are only the mask is tragedy." To Machiavelli, the mask was a tool. To Alan Watts, the mask was a performance of the universe itself. You can wear it, just don't get trapped inside it. So if you wish to move through life with wisdom and power, the second lesson is, master perception, but stay conscious of the self beneath the image. Think of how much energy people waste defending their image, pretending to be strong. Wise, moral, spiritual. They polish their mask but never see the face behind it. And the more they cling to how they appear, the more they lose touch with what they are. Machiavelli would smile at this. He'd say that appearances are necessary, but dangerous if you forget their purpose. They are tools for survival in a world built on illusions. Alan Watts would go deeper. He'd remind you that the moment you realize you're playing a role, you're already free. You can dance with society's illusions without being enslaved by them. Most people believe they are authentic when they reject all roles. But both Watts and Machiavelli would say that's just another disguise, the ego of rebellion. True authenticity is to be aware that you're acting and still act beautifully. When you can shape how the world perceives you without losing awareness of the actor, you enter the rare space between power and peace. That is where freedom lives. The person who knows the power of perception, but no longer seeks validation from it, becomes untouchable. They can use the world's illusions without being consumed by them. They become fluid, like water, adapting, reflecting, flowing around every obstacle. Alan Watts called this the art of effortless living. Machiavelli called it virtue, the power of adaptability, intelligence and inner strength in a changing world. Two languages, one truth. To live consciously in the game of perception is to master both the outer and inner worlds. So ask yourself, who are you when no one is watching? Who are you without the mask, the role, the audience? That silent awareness is your true power. And once you know that, the world can no longer control you. Part 3. The balance between power and morality. Machiavelli is often painted as a man without conscience, a schemer whispering that the ends justify the means. But that's a shallow reading of a deep thinker. What he really taught was that moral purity without understanding reality is just another form of blindness. He didn't despise morality, he despised hypocrisy. He looked at the world and saw that people pretend to be good because it is useful, but rarely because they understand goodness itself. He wrote, "A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must inevitably come to grief among so many who are not good." Alan Watts would smile at this, not because he agreed with the cynicism, but because he saw the paradox in it. Watts might say, "You cannot be truly good until you stop trying to appear good." That is the key, to act rightly, not righteously. To see that real virtue arises from awareness, not from image. When Machiavelli spoke of power, he was not celebrating manipulation. He was revealing the cost of living without awareness of human nature. He was saying, if you ignore how the world works, the world will crush you. Watts would respond, if you believe only in the world's rules, you will crush your soul. Between those two truths lies a razor's edge, the balance between power and morality. Most people swing wildly between two extremes. They either become naive idealists, blind to the cruelty of the world, or cold manipulators, blind to their own humanity. But the wise person, the truly free person, walks between them like a tightrope walker, aware of both gravity and grace. To be moral without awareness is to be fragile. To be powerful without compassion is to be empty. So the lesson of Machiavelli through the eyes of Alan Watts is this: understand darkness without becoming it. Use light without worshiping it. The man or woman who can do that possesses the rarest power of all, the power of clarity. They can play the game of power without losing their soul, because they see through both the mask of good and the mask of evil. They know that both are part of the dance and that truth lies beyond either extreme. Watts would say, good and evil are two sides of the same coin. Flip it and you will see yourself in both. Machiavelli would simply nod, because he knew that to rule others, you must first rule the contradictions within yourself. So the third hidden lesson is this: true power begins when you stop pretending to be purely good and start being consciously real. Part 4. The illusion of control. The world is obsessed with control. We build systems, hierarchies, strategies, all in the name of safety. We cling to control like a drowning man clings to driftwood, terrified of the vast ocean of uncertainty. Machiavelli understood this obsession better than anyone. He wrote, "Fortune is like a woman. To keep her under, one must beat her and bully her." That sounds harsh, and it is. But beneath that line lies a metaphor about the illusion of mastery. He believed life could be wrestled into submission, but even he admitted that fortune can never be truly tamed. Alan Watts, centuries later, would laugh gently at this. He'd say, "You can't control the ocean by grabbing it with your hands, but you can surf the wave." And that is the essence of wisdom. Machiavelli teaches how to act effectively in a world of chaos. Watts teaches how to flow with that chaos without fear. Together they reveal that the greatest intelligence lies not in control, but in cooperation with the inevitable. Think about it. Every tyrant in history tried to control life. Every anxious mind tries to control outcomes. But life keeps moving, unpredictable, spontaneous, wild. Machiavelli's prince fails when he believes control is permanent. Watts's sage succeeds when he realizes control is an illusion. When you stop forcing life to obey your will, you discover something strange. You begin to act with more power, not less. Because your actions are now aligned with the current, not against it. You're no longer fighting the wave, you're dancing with it. This is what Watts called wu-wei, effortless action, and what Machiavelli would call virtù guided by fortune. Both mean the same thing: mastery through harmony, not domination. So the fourth hidden lesson is this: stop controlling life and start cooperating with its flow. The person who accepts uncertainty becomes unshakable. The person who needs control becomes a slave to fear. Every manipulator, every strategist, every ruler, all crumble the moment life refuses to follow their script. But the awakened individual flows through change like water through stone, adapting, flexible, impossible to defeat. Because when you no longer demand that the world be different, the world can no longer break you, and that is a power no one can take away. Part 5. The Mirror of Self-Deception. Machiavelli studied rulers. Watts studied souls. But both came to the same discovery. The greatest enemy you will ever face is not out there. It's within your own mind. Machiavelli warned that a ruler who surrounds himself with flatterers will soon fall into ruin. He said, the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the man he has around him. But Alan Watts would translate this into spiritual language. The first sign of awakening is noticing the voices you surround yourself with inside your own head. The tyrant of the mind is self-deception, the endless chatter that convinces you you're powerless, or righteous, or special, or doomed. It is the constant narrative that blinds you to what's actually happening. Machiavelli saw how kings and princes destroyed themselves because they could not bear to see the truth. Watts saw how ordinary people suffered because they confused their thoughts with reality. And so the fifth hidden lesson emerges. You cannot master life until you stop lying to yourself. Look within. How many of your beliefs are inherited, not discovered? How many of your fears are stories you never questioned? How many of your ambitions are just echoes of what society told you to want? Machiavelli would tell you to face these illusions ruthlessly, to see them for what they are, without mercy. Watts would tell you to face them playfully, to laugh as the mask slips away. One cuts with the sword of clarity, the other dissolves with the light of awareness. But both free you from the tyranny of the false self. When you stop defending your image, when you stop justifying your patterns, you finally meet yourself raw, unfiltered, honest. And that moment of confrontation is the beginning of real intelligence. Because a mind that sees itself clearly cannot be manipulated. Not by propaganda, not by fear, not by pride. It becomes a mirror that reflects truth instead of distorting it. And such a mind, Machiavelli would say, is a ruler in the truest sense, one who commands himself first. Watts would nod and add, when you stop deceiving yourself, you realize there was never anything to control in the first place. That realization, both humbling and liberating, is where all wisdom begins. So remember this: the man who conquers others is powerful. The man who conquers himself is free. Part 6. The Strength of Emptiness. Machiavelli spoke often about strategy, influence, and position, but behind all of it was one silent truth. Power always depends on what people believe about you, and what people believe about you depends on what you project. He wrote, "It is not essential that a prince should have all the good qualities I have enumerated, but it is most essential that he should seem to have them." In other words, appearance is power, but Alan Watts would remind us that attachment to appearance is the beginning of suffering. Watts might whisper, "You are not what you appear to be, you are what watches the appearance." So what happens when you no longer need to project anything? When you stop needing to be perceived as powerful or wise or successful, you become empty, but in that emptiness, you find something more potent than power itself. Because true strength is not in holding on, but in letting go. Machiavelli's world was built on control. Watt's world was built on surrender. Yet both discovered that survival and mastery belong to those who adapt, those who can change shape without losing center. Watts often compared life to music. You don't dance to reach the end of the song. You dance because dancing is the point. In that same way, true intelligence is not about holding on to status. It's about moving through life with fluidity. This is the sixth hidden lesson. Emptiness is not weakness, it is flexibility. When you are full of yourself, full of opinions, ego, expectations, life cannot enter you. But when you are empty, you become receptive, creative, spontaneous. Machiavelli would call this virtù, the power to shape circumstances rather than be shaped by them. Watts would call it the art of not being afraid to disappear. The most powerful person in the room is not the one who dominates, but the one who does not need to. Because when you no longer seek control, people can feel it. They sense an ease, a calm confidence that cannot be faked. It's the strength of someone who has already accepted loss, and therefore cannot be blackmailed by it. That is the secret of true authority. Not the power to command others, but the presence that makes others command themselves. It's what Machiavelli's prince lacked and what Watts's sage embodied, a power born not of possession but of peace. When the world sees that you have nothing to prove, it loses its power over you. When you stop fearing emptiness, you stop fearing life. And that perhaps is the most revolutionary act of all. Part 7. Freedom beyond power. The final hidden lesson takes us beyond politics, beyond psychology, even beyond the self. It is the moment when you realize that the entire pursuit of power was never about power at all, it was about freedom. Machiavelli sought freedom from chaos, the ability to shape destiny. Alan Watts sought freedom from illusion, the ability to surrender to destiny. Both were chasing the same liberation from fear. But here's the paradox. The more you chase power to escape fear, the more fear controls you. The more you chase freedom to escape suffering, the more suffering defines you. Alan Watts would say, the desire for security and the feeling of insecurity are the same thing. And Machiavelli might agree. He'd remind us that the powerful man is always the most afraid of losing his throne. So the seventh and final lesson is this. Real freedom begins when you no longer need to be free. Sounds absurd, doesn't it? But think about it. When you stop fighting against the world, when you stop demanding that things be different, a strange peace descends. It is not resignation. It is understanding. It is the realization that life was never something to be conquered. It was something to be experienced. Machiavelli wrote that fortune is a river, unpredictable and violent. Watts would answer, yes, and you are the water itself. Freedom is not outside you. It is not granted by wealth, status, or enlightenment. It arises the moment you stop searching and see that the searcher and the goal were never separate. The world of power collapses when you awaken to this truth. The manipulator loses his grip. The victim loses his chains, because both were roles in the same play. In that moment, you step off the stage and watch the drama unfold, not with fear, but with laughter. Because now you understand, the game of life was never meant to be won. It was meant to be played consciously. Watts would say, you are the universe playing hide and seek with itself. And Machiavelli, perhaps with a sly grin, would finally agree. Because even the cunning mind must bow before the mystery of existence. To be beyond control, beyond fear, beyond illusion, that is the true throne of power. And it belongs to no one. Ending. The Prince and the Sage. So what remains after all these lessons? After the strategies of Machiavelli and the serenity of Alan Watts intertwine, you begin to see that they were never opposites, but two reflections of the same truth. Machiavelli teaches you how to move wisely in a world of illusion. Watts teaches you how to awaken from the illusion itself. One builds strength in the storm. The other becomes the storm. Together they whisper a final secret. To understand power is to see its limits. To understand freedom is to no longer fear those limits. When you combine awareness with strategy, compassion with intelligence, Detachment with purpose, you become something rare, a conscious being in an unconscious world. You move through chaos without being broken by it. You lead not by domination but by understanding. You influence not by control but by clarity, and that is what makes you impossible to control. Because the one who has seen through the game cannot be trapped by it. They can play, but they are no longer players. They are awareness itself, flowing through every move with grace. So remember, as you walk your own path, Machiavelli's realism will protect your mind. Alan Watts's wisdom will free your spirit, and when these two merge within you, you'll discover something astonishing, that life in all its contradictions was never your enemy. It was your greatest teacher. The real question then is not, how do I control the world? But can I be fully alive in it, awake, aware, and unafraid? Because that, as both the prince and the sage would agree, is the highest form of power and the deepest kind of freedom.